tell us about the strengths that hiring managers want from their future team members. And here's a biggie: mastering virtual interviews. For over 15 years, Rob has been managing and building private businesses across the world, primarily in the fintech industry, in all facets of the business, including marketing, staffing, human capital, and advertising. Let's welcome Rob.
I live up to that introduction. Firstly, it's always a privilege and a pleasure to be able to contribute and speak at events like this. So thank you to the team at LSF for putting it together. It's much appreciated. And as we've said, we're going to be talking about navigating the interview process during COVID. I do want to point out that there is no magic solution. What we are hoping to do is give you some pointers and some tips and some actions that you can tweak, take into your current job searches or current processes. I think we're just waiting on the presentation to go live. Okay, so what do we need to understand? We need to understand that 2020 is not 2008 all over again. What I mean by that is that in classic business cycles, what happens is the number of openings decrease and the number of candidates increase, or vice versa. This crisis has demonstrated that we're in what we would call disequilibrium, so structural change. So some industries and firms have been absolutely devastated, whilst others have rebounded very quickly, others continue to thrive exceptionally. One of COVID-19's legacies, as we know, is that within weeks, millions of people were filing for unemployment benefits. Companies were worried about a shortage of talent, suddenly had their pick of qualified applicants, and lots of them. The good news is that businesses are still hiring. Demand may vary depending on region, industry, and other factors. The significant and standout difference between those who have landed jobs and those who haven't was their ability to stand out. So we've made some assumptions for this presentation's sake. We've broken them into three. Firstly being, you're either being interviewed by a hiring manager or a recruiter for a specific job, or face-to-face or online. Or having been approached by a recruiter or hiring manager about a specific job. Secondly, you're wanting to boost your profile, to stand out and to create opportunities. Thirdly, you're thinking about changing jobs in the same or a different industry. As I said, following these suggestions won't guarantee you a job, but I'm hoping it will aid your job search. And if anyone wants to reach out to myself or us directly afterwards, please do. More than happy to have a conversation. So before we get started, how do we stand out? What are the common mistakes? And what are people looking for? We've, during research and putting this presentation together, spoken to some of our clients, and we always like to start with what should we be thinking about before we even enter this process. We know, and our clients would concur, that interviews via Zoom, Teams, etc., remove somewhat of the personal touch. It's hard to assess the candidate's soft skills. So what do we need to be thinking about? Avoid the phone. That's your last option. It's the hardest and most difficult way to create a personal impression. Face-to-face is obviously preferable. We live in a time where predominantly at the moment it is video conferencing. Secondly, do your research. By that, we mean don't just recite the company's page, the history, the company culture. Read about the leaders within the business, read about the people, gauge the DNA of the business. What's the phraseology? What's the company saying? And prior to meeting, do everything you can to learn everything about the company, the history, their strategy. There's a phrase, never work with children or technology. Make sure you know the tech. You have 2 minutes during any initial conversation online or in person, for that matter, to make an impression. If you're struggling with the tech, you're not going to make the right impression. Digital footprints are important. Check your public and social media feeds, clean up what needs to be, what needs attention, and ensure that you are connected to at least relevant people that you're meeting. This creates what we call social proof, a key principle of persuasion. The CV, most of us, and what we do can be found online. It's still highly relevant and I would say important to create a CV specific to the opportunity that you are applying for. Why? It shows you're not just interested in a job, but you're interested in a career with the business. Q&A. First questions. The simplest and most effective strategy, in my view, is the one that's always the least utilized. And by that, I mean giving unexpected answers to the most common interview questions. Why? We hear the same answers repeatedly. Nothing makes people engage and listen more than a well thought out or surprising answer, meaning you stand out against everyone else who will have more than likely given a perfectly good and satisfactory answer. Equally, make sure you're concise and you understand what's being asked for. Most interviews or engagements will start with some variation of the statement, tell us a little bit about yourself, why are you interested in this position? Since you know it's coming, have a strong answer ready. For example, tell me about yourself. This question isn't an invitation to tell your life story. The interviewer wants to know why you're interested in the position and what makes you qualified. What's your greatest strength? Most people will say something like, thanks to my extensive experience in X, I'm well versed in Y. Talk about the situation and in examples that bring these to highlight. Then really bring it home and talk about how you're nurturing those skills and how you want to develop those skills. Lastly, do you have any questions for us? If the answer is no, that's the wrong answer. You do have the right to be bold and ask searching questions, but be polite. So where does that take us? That's not. Okay. So the question, how do we stand out in today's interview environment with recruiters and hiring managers? One of our clients, the head of transformation, Patrick Ryan at Bupa, talks about candidates standing out when they're genuine and authentic, when they don't pretend they have a perfect answer or they've never made a mistake. It enables him to have a proper conversation with them and assess whether they're a good fit. We can rule out some of the extremes during COVID. The Fortune 500 CEO who said they had to choose between two similar candidates and they did it on a handshake. That might sound extreme, but it's not as judgmental as you might think and certainly more common. However, that is unlikely as we are now mostly greeted on video conferencing or with an elbow. So what are we really talking about? We're talking about pie. Studies show that the highest rated interviewers are the ones that are positive, interested, and engaged in a conversation, which is difficult when you're pondering what question might come next or you're trying to answer it. My advice here is to focus on being a thoughtful participant in that conversation, not trying to predict what's coming next. In person or not? If it's not in person, treat it like it is. Check your broadband connectivity, dress to impress, make sure the noise setting is low and you have the facilities to have a smooth conversation and video always on. Dressing to impress means appropriately. Have a look at the organization you're interviewing with, whether that's online or in person. Mirror the organization's dress sense. Eye contact, even online, is absolutely key. If you've got one or multiple people in the room, introduce yourself, make eye contact, smile. Don't assume if there's multiple people on a call or in a room that they'll know you. People get pulled into meetings all the time at last minute. Body language is key. If you learn to mirror body language, you'll learn to craft your responses physically as well as verbally in line with what your interviewers are looking for. For example, if someone says they're open-minded and looking for ideas, but they've got their arms and legs folded and crossed, the reality is they're probably not. So it's the details that will make the difference. We talk about the motions. By that, we mean going through the motions. People that build rapport and impress are genuinely the ones that care about the company and the job they're interviewing for and have done their research. If you're going through the motions, don't. It's not going to impress anyone, and it's going to be difficult to proceed through that job flow process. We talk about the right information. It needs to be relevant and related to the role of the business. So, for example, instead of saying, I increase productivity per head, often people put the focus on their skills and their previous positions. That problem is that almost everyone else approaches it in the same way. So there's little chance of rising to the top of the interview pile. A real world example or a good way to stand out would be to highlight and focus on the accomplishments and being specific. How much efficiency did you drive in the change management program you ran? How many people did you manage? What products did you launch? What scale in terms of financial results did you achieve? What changes did you implement? And once you've listed your accomplishments, bring that background with the skills and positions. STAR, what does it mean? Situation, task, action, results. So when answering questions, set up the situation and the task. That provides the background and context. The main point is the action. What did you do? And what did you achieve in the results? In one quarter, I streamlined a process which saved my team and business 150 hours and reduced errors in orders by 15%. Keep it real, keep it factual, but focus on situation, task, action, and results. When we talk about other skills, I prefer to think that we are looking for Swiss Army knives. We're looking for core skills backed up with complementary skills. What skills from other part of your life can you use in an interview and a job? What transferable skills might you have? Strong communication skills, critical thinking. For example, the ability to apply a different perspective. I know that most of us look for people with strong communication skills. If you've developed the ability to easily share information to and from colleagues, stakeholders, and clients, that's an easily transferable skill in any workplace. Commonly now, we see technology literacy as one of the most common. Our ability to be comfortable and the ability to navigate new technology. Most of the roles that we will be working within will require changes in technology. Employees value people who can learn new tools and software quickly to complete tasks. Okay, so what are we then thinking about? We're thinking about complicated questions. This happens, and sometimes it's not the question. It can be a language barrier, it can be a poor connection on a phone, it can be a poor VC connection. That can make the question seem complicated, or it could just be a very difficult question. Don't be afraid to ask for the question or repeat the question for clarification. If you're unsure, don't give a stock answer. What we're really looking for is your ability to think through the information, reach a solution, and then ask for it and explain how you would get there. That's far better than giving a stock answer. It's a structured, logical way to working through a problem, and most of us are looking for problem solvers. When we think about the right attitude, that's simply how do you turn up? What do we do in that moment? So for me, that is all about having the right communication skills, it's having the right information to hand, and it's about really being engaged and wanting the role. Don't be afraid to ask. When we talk about that, what do we mean? If you're dealing with a recruiter or someone in recruitment, what's their approach? How are they going to represent you? Do they get you? Do they understand you? Especially if you're looking for changes in industries or doing something different. I actually left my industry for 18 months and consulted in private equity and fintech. When I decided that I wanted to get a full-time job again, I met with 4 headhunters. I spent a considerable amount of time with those headhunters explaining that I didn't want to work within the same industry. There was probably only one that really understood that, and that was the one person that I ended up working with. So it is important that you pick the right partner and the right person to represent you. Internal hiring managers, avoid typical day-to-day questions like, what does the company do? What's the culture like? You have a right to question that, but I would dig deeper. What do they do? How do they do it? What is the business looking for? You've got the right to interview them as well, and that's extremely important. When we talk about honesty, that's the trust equation. Don't inflate your income. Don't add on discretionary bonuses as part of your guaranteed compensation. Don't take the credit for other people's work or achievements or embellish it. It always comes to light. If you haven't done something, there's no shame in that. There's no problem with that. It is best to be honest. And we see a number of candidates fall short at job offer stage because they have artificially inflated their increments on their salaries. It's okay to make a mistake. I've probably made 5 or 6 already during this presentation. People stumble. 45 minutes to an hour talking is hard to do. If I reference the Harvard Business Review, there was my mistake. The best thing to do is focus on the moment and answer the question as if it's the first. Dealing with pressure is a skill and you'll get used to it. So what do some of our clients say? Articulating what you're currently doing and what you want to do in the future. Positive attitudes. Being able to outline what you do currently. The ability to show what you've done through examples, research and company backgrounds, and explaining skills with real-world examples. So, what are some of the common mistakes that we see? We see people not preparing well enough, like not even knowing the title of the role that they're interviewing for. We've seen candidates turn up to the wrong client, yet interview for a role that they weren't submitted for. We've seen people take pets, family members, friends to interviews. We've seen people submitting a role to their current boss without checking the business's name. On one occasion, we had, not in this business, this is a very long time ago, a candidate headbutt the CEO off his drinks after accepting the offer. another person pretending to be their more successful sibling. And whilst all of those might seem a bit far-fetched, they did actually happen. But the two most common areas of mistake that we see: tardiness, being late without informing your contact that you're going to be late, and rearranging the meeting more than once. You have a limited time to demonstrate credibility and to make a difference. So please bear that in mind. Assumptions. Never assume. It's not final until it's final. It's never just one last chat. It's never just one last meeting with the MD, the CEO, the founder. It is that business putting you in the social context so they actually see what you're like and you let your guard down. Until you have a contract and an offer, it is not final. Salary negotiation and titles. Be truthful and realistic. Absolutely know your worth. Back it up with market data. Do your research and be able to make comparisons. But do consider what the offer is, what the role is offering career-wise. I'm not saying sell yourself short, but do have realistic expectations. If you're interviewing for a job and the title is more important than the opportunity, then you're going to need to rethink your approach. Following up. This is standard. A thank you and a response goes a long way. The ability to demonstrate you've started doing the job, especially when people are looking to change jobs or demonstrate transferable skills, is key. We know that we see clients make decisions all the time to hire after a short amount of time. Why? Because the candidate's probably done an exceptional amount of research. They're able to demonstrate exactly how they're going to add value to that business moving forward. And they've been well prepared enough to explain to the business what they would need in terms of support. Learning mindsets, critical. We're in a constantly changing environment. Organizations want people who continuously learn, and the ability to shift thinking, add value, and to be continuously learning your craft is essential. When we talk about we're not the only one, simply, we're not here to make up the numbers. You don't have to attend an interview or a meeting should you not want to, but if you're going to show up, because you can't fake enthusiasm. And if you don't have the enthusiasm for the job or the client you're meeting, that will come across. Okay. So we've got some client feedback here, talking about mistakes, arrogance, unrealistic expectations, etc. So the last, what are we looking for? How do we stand out? Resilience. No more so than probably the past 18 months in Hong Kong has resilience been key. The ability to move on, the ability to survive and to adapt, which is difficult for people who perhaps haven't been through that. Those of us that worked through 9/11, the GFC, European debt crisis, etc., have had to pivot and change constantly. So your ability to demonstrate emotional resilience, grit, problem solving is going to be essential. People want to see that. Growth mindsets, learning ability and agility, the willingness and enthusiasm to grow within an organization and learn new skills. Interests and curiosity. It goes without saying, people want people that have interests. They want people that are going to be curious about the organizations they're working for and how they can help advance and grow that. Problem solvers, people don't hire problem solvers. They want people that solve with solutions, with critical thinking and commitment. Last two, exposure. What have you done? What's complementary? Have you worked for an NGO? What rounded skills have you got? That's a huge plus when you're applying for jobs within any environment. And lastly, life experience. All the businesses we work with, including our own, want to enrich culture. We want depth. We want people that are doing different things. So whilst it will be wonderful for you to talk about your work and your experience within work, we want to know the real you. So it's about passion. It's about what you like doing and the person you are as much as the skills that you have. So where does that leave us? Some comments from our clients and into a bit of Q&A. So in summary, focus on how you stand out. Preparation is everything. Adding value to the whole process is essential. And at this time, persistence is key and don't give up.
Okay, thank you so much, Rob. We do have one question for you. Shabana Fatima asks, could you please throw some insights on what is the best way to answer? Why looking for jobs after working in one organization for a long period?
Some questions asked. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I've had, prior to this, 2 jobs for 8 years and 7 years. So I think that people automatically put you in the bracket that you might be institutionalized. So if you've been in a role for a long period of time, I would break down your push-pull factors. So, for example, why are you looking to leave? Have you hit a glass ceiling, in your opinion? What's the organization doing? There's many reasons why people choose to leave an organization after a long period of time. Pursuit of a different career, transferring the skills that they've got into another business. The culture of the business has changed. The culture of the business they're applying for mirrors what they now want. So I would treat it as a natural evolution, rather than just saying, well, I want to move because I've been there for 10 years and now it's time to do something different. I think you need to really think about why you are looking to make a change after that period of time. And typically it falls into one of three areas that we see. People that have hit a very senior level, wanting to do something different. The middle ground in terms of employees on an upward trajectory, looking at the organization and perhaps the culture's changed. And we've seen COVID as an example of that, really show which companies have strong cultures and which ones perhaps need to do a bit of work. And lastly, the people that are potentially in an unfortunate position at this point in time where the business can't transfer their skills, they can't reskill those people, and they are now in the job market.
Well, thank you. I think one of the other observations I took away from your session was being a thoughtful participant. It requires a particular skill to be able to give a thoughtful answer. If you're being asked complex questions, to really stop, think, and go over in your head what that answer would look like. That's a skill one masters. I'm just trying to think, how many interviews do you need to go through to kind of actually master that skill? And we've got 2 minutes for you.
Okay, 2 minutes. So my first piece of advice is most of us need to pause. Taught to, by default, respond quickly. People in sales and staffing, for example, are no different. It is a skill. I think if you take a step back and you address everything that you do in terms of actively listening and asking yourself the question in your mind, what are they actually asking me? And what answer do I want to give? Going back to being concise, being relevant in terms of what you've done to enable you to answer that question. That's a start. Outside of that, it's practice. You speak to a lot of people, you meet a lot of people. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. And it's a skill that I would say I'm still working very hard to master.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I thought that was very insightful. We came away with learning all of the must-haves and must-dos. I thought that was really interesting. I have to say to everybody that's viewing us live, we're going to be making all of these bite-sized recordings as an aid for your future job search, and you can find them on lsfglobal.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.